Empower yourself to keep your children safe and secure. And I really would like the main focus of our talk to be about what you can do proactively to keep your children safe. Because ultimately, with all the discussions about the recent Chaim Walder news, this is the most important takeaway for parents. Much of the swirl around this, there's nothing we can do to impact this, but what we can do is to educate ourselves, because education is what will keep our kids safe. I want to tell you, I want to open with an absolutely remarkable story. We published our child safety book a little over 10 years ago. We published a book called Let's Stay Safe together with ArtScroll, and it was a child safety book. It's a reader, user-friendly, to be able to sit with the children on the couch and teach them child safety lessons in a upbeat way without frightening them. Parenthetically, the research shows that when we frighten our children or when we're frightened ourselves, it's difficult for us to learn anything because the fear overtakes us. So I did a talk in Shalamis. This was really a transformative moment for me in understanding child safety and how impactful education could be. So I did the talk in Shalamis. The school at the time was in Flatbush, and it was like an auditorium style where the seats were, were gradually elevated or going down towards the speaker, any way you look at it. I spoke for about a half hour, and as soon as I finished my presentation, a woman got up. I took questions and answers. I said, okay, we'll open up to questions right now. And a woman was sitting right in front, and she asked if she could speak first. I said, sure. So she turned around and faced the parent body of Shalamis that were there. There were probably 200 parents in the audience. And she told them, she said, I want to tell you a story. She says, I'm not from your community. I'm not a religious Jew. I'm Jewish, but I'm not religious. And she said that she was in Eichler's, a local Judaica store, right before Hanukkah, just to buy a menorah and some oil because she, for her family. And she said, I saw your safety book there. I saw this Let's Stay Safe book there. And it looked interesting, so I purchased it. And I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I gave it to our daughter to read a week or two before Hanukkah. At the party, she said, my uncle was starting to abuse her. Didn't abuse her yet, thank God, but he had her on her lap, and he was getting inappropriate with her. And the 6-year-old kid turned to first she started yelling. She said, stop that. And then she ran to the kitchen and she told her mother, Mommy, remember you told me that if somebody gets inappropriate with me or touches me in a private spot, I should tell you right away. Well, so-and-so, this child's great uncle, did that. He touched me in an inappropriate space. And the woman told the people, she said, look, I saw there was a sign that Rabbi Horowitz is speaking, and I wanted to come to tell you that this stuff really works. That speaking to your children works and educating them works. Please, please. And she turned around, she was very, she said, I don't know this man. He didn't tell me to come up here and say this. And then she turned to me and she started crying. And she said, Rabbi Horowitz, you saved my daughter's life. And it was really remarkable. And what was most impactful to me is that this stuff worked. And research shows that it works. Anecdotally, we know that child safety education is the most effective thing that you could do as parents. And this is what I want to talk to you about mostly. There's issues about how to speak to your children, about the Chaim Walder thing, especially to those parents in Israel. We got many communications from parents that I'm going to talk about that. And it's important that you do this. In a nutshell, Dr. Pelkowitz, in a video that I'm going to be posting, I interviewed him right after the Walder thing broke, and he said that parents should be honest with their children, parents should listen to your children. It's most important that you use this as a teachable moment so that children know they can talk to you about anything and that you're approachable. And he said, which was striking to me, that one of the most refreshing things you can tell your children is, I don't know. And if they ask you why this happened and, what's going on exactly, you say, you could say, look, I really don't, he watched the video. He was really fantastic. And Dr. Schwartz, I interviewed also, he was fantastic as well. He is an expert in anxiety. We'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later. I want to talk to you about education because we know that education works. And one of the things that's difficult is especially if you have adolescents, or preteens, it's hard to get their attention. It's hard to get their attention. We all know that. And when you start getting their attention, you know that you have a finite amount of time. A teachable moment means that by its very definition, it's a moment where you have an opportunity to teach something that you might not have otherwise. The example that I give often, and I encourage you, just to think about this, and like imagine if I'm teaching the American Revolution, I'm teaching American history. It's during the winter time. My students went out for a break. They come back afterwards. Everybody's sitting down studying, and one of my students walks in and starts yelling, "It's freezing outside!" Rubbing his hands. Okay, get the visual image. Teaching a lesson, some kid comes in, disrupts my lesson. Now, the classical way to deal with this was to admonish the child. A creative teacher who gets it says something like, "Wow, you were outside for how long? 15 minutes? You had a winter coat. Could you imagine how George Washington's troops were feeling in Valley Forge?" Which is one of the lessons during the Revolutionary War, that George Washington's troops were poorly clothed and it was freezing and they had a very difficult winter. Imagine how they felt. So what that brilliant teacher did is took a distraction when people were, it could have easily been a power struggle. He would start arguing with the child and all of this. It could have turned out this way, but the teacher was creative and he wove that right into the lesson and said, well, how do you think they felt at Valley Forge? That's what a teachable moment is. And I really, really encourage you. I titled this Empower Yourself because it's all about empowering. The more you know about child safety education, the more you understand how it works, the better equipped you'll be to really keep your kids safe. This stuff really, really, really works. So if your children are discussing this with you, let's say your children ask you if they heard something in school, again, especially in Israel, but even here, there's a discussion, should I keep the books at home, should I not, do I do this, do I do... All of these discussions center around child safety. And if you weave it into the lesson, you say, well, that's true. Do you know what happened? There were some very serious accusations. And what are the takeaway lessons? You speak about this. You say, and it's okay with saying, I don't know the exact details. But he is a prominent person, and he wrote a lot of great books. And you may, if we had them in the house, you say they were in a house, but he was accused of being inappropriate with children. And it could be anyone. Those are the lessons that you want to teach your children. And rather than frightening them, teach them, shed light, not heat. Talk to them about the basic lessons of child abuse prevention, which are no one's ever allowed to tell you to keep a secret from your parent. Okay, that's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that there's good touching, bad touching. Some touching is okay, some touching is not okay. It's covered by a bathing suit. That's not an appropriate touching. Okay, your body belongs to you, that you have ownership of your personal space, and that children should feel empowered to protect that space. The research shows that if children have even a drawer at home, a private space, and you teach your children that to knock when you go into someone else's room, or if you go into somebody else's drawer, you have to ask them first because that's a private space. The research shows that just that alone makes children more likely to defend their personal space. Okay? And so we have those three lessons. Again, those secrets from parents, Your body belongs to you, good touching, bad touching. And if you feel uncomfortable, get out of any situation that you feel uncomfortable. No one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable. Those are the main lessons of child safety. Now, there's a whole area of supervision, which means we need to supervise our children differently. My generation, I'm 62 years old, we didn't think like this when we were raising our children. We should have, we didn't know enough. But we know now that anyone can be an abuser, and we should judge the actions of the people. If people are acting in a way that seems to be untoward, or the children, we should trust our instincts. We teach our children to trust our instincts. And we know that this dialogue is the most important thing. Now, if your children are coming to you to discuss this and they're uncomfortable, it is such a wonderful lesson if you tell them, I know this must be an uncomfortable conversation. You can always talk to us about anything, and reward them and thank them for coming to you. And that's it. This conversation is the beginning of a discussion. It's the beginning of child safety education. And the reason this works is because abusers they try to figure out a process called grooming. They try to figure out which children they're able to get away with abusing. And what they typically look for are children who are uneducated about their own bodies and are uneducated in basics of child safety. And that's why when people think and people say, well, we want to keep our children, we want to keep our children sheltered. Great, keep them sheltered, but don't keep them naive. Because if they, and it has nothing to do with sex education, you're teaching them about the notion of privacy and the notion that it could be anyone. That's really a very important message. And the body of knowledge that you know as a parent, the more you learn, the more you study this, the more you understand child safety, the better equipped you'll be to keep your children safe. So rather than, and I get this so often, I wrote articles on this when there was an Anthony Weiner business, where there was a scandal in New York, and there was a scandal, with Rudy Giuliani. I wrote articles then on my website telling parents, don't shy away from it. I'm not saying you should go tell your children about it, but if the kids come home and they're talking about it among themselves, don't get into that. It's perfectly understandable if you meet your friends tomorrow and after doing carpool, and one of your friends says, did your kids ask you? And you say, no. Did your kids ask you? No. Oh, great. Because we almost hope that our children don't bring it up, because who wants to have an uncomfortable conversation? But that's where the learning takes place. That's where the learning takes place. So rather than shy away from it, we shy away because we're uncomfortable, and we shy away because we might not have the right answers. That's okay. It's okay if it's an uncomfortable conversation. What better way is there? Again, think of that teachable moment. What better time is there to speak to your children about child safety and about abuse prevention than a time where it's in the news, where the children are talking about it, where the children are concerned about it. So that's the big idea. The big idea is to be educated, to educate yourselves. We have a 9-minute free video that I'm going to put up on this page. I'm going to put it on this Instagram page. I'll put it on other social media platforms of mine. It's at Yaakov Horowitz on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. So study, discuss, learn, share it with others. We have one of the videos we made with Hebrew subtitles. So get that to other friends of yours, so you can all start having these very important dialogues on child safety. So that's the short message. As to the details of the case, I don't, if your children do discuss it with you, then it's important to have the discussion. I have many thoughts as someone who's been involved in child safety for many years. I have very strong feelings about this, but honestly, I don't want this particular conversation to be about that. I'm asking you and encouraging you that if your children bring it up, welcome it as an opportunity to have an extraordinarily important conversation with your children. And one of the things that the children should take away from there is the notion that they can talk to you about anything, and that you'll be right up front with them. If there's something you don't know, you will tell them. For those parents, if you're living in Israel and your children were in contact with Chaim Welder over the course of time, I absolutely encourage you to get a consultation from a professional therapist who is an expert in child abuse prevention. Don't go to folks like me. I'm a very well-meaning person. I try to educate myself as best I can about this subject so that I can educate others, but I'm not an expert in treatment, and this requires, if a child of you, if you're afraid that the child of yours may have been taken advantage by Welder, or you just want to explore and find out a little bit more, absolutely, by all means, go to a professional therapist who's licensed and credentialed and specializes in child abuse. And this is just a matter of good practice. And especially, your daughters they're older and they start asking you how could this have happened? Like, these are the types of questions. If they say, "Well, I heard these accusations, and I read the books, and I could it have been like that way? And how did these girls not say anything?" Then you explain. That's where you get the chance to talk about it. You see, sometimes we get impressed by what people do and the fact that they occupy prominent positions in our community, but that's not the way we should think. If they're doing things that, are making children uncomfortable, or if they violate boundaries, then we should speak up. That's another important message. Talk to them. Again, older children, pre-adolescent or adolescents, just be honest, explain. We have chasicha, that we're not supposed to seclude ourselves with other people, and nobody should ever seclude themselves with you. No adult should seclude. And if somebody does, say something. I don't care who it is. Okay, these are the important messages that an opportunity like this really gives you the chance to have these discussions. The research says that we should not be frightening our children. It's not helpful. I said that before. I'll say it again. We should have informed conversations. David Pelkowitz, who mentored me throughout, my learning curve when we wrote the book, which, by the way, Dr. Pelkowitz reviewed every page and every image. Dr. Pelkowitz says that the experts in the field say that we should have a moderate amount of anxiety when we speak to our children, like 2-3 out of 10, enough to say that this is something important and let them know that it's not like brush your teeth, it's more important than, tell them this, of course, but I'm saying your body language should convey that this is something important, but not to the extent where you're going to frighten them, because we know that research shows that when fear creeps into our minds, we just can't think clearly. So that's my message. Please feel empowered. That's my message. Please feel empowered. You can do this. That woman I mentioned earlier about the story with Shalamis, and the woman who spoke about how the child safety information saved her child. We know that this works. Dr. Pelkowitz often says that one informed conversation with your children, with a moderate amount of follow-up, makes them 4 to 5 times more likely to exhibit defensive behavior if someone attempts to invade their space. So this is what we should be doing. Speak to your children. Let them know. One of the things that abusers often do is they try to separate the children from the parents by telling them not to tell you, which is why one of the 4 safety messages is, don't keep secrets from your parents. This is all logical and understandable. And another thing that they employ is that it's a terribly uncomfortable conversation to have with children. For parents, for children to have with parents. In fact, there was an incident a few years ago A very unfortunate incident with the school here in the greater New York area. It was actually a boy's, it was a 15-year-old boy was being cyberbullied. It was more than bullying. What happened was, unfortunately, actually a faculty member of the school, was opening social media accounts with fake names of girls, and he would get into conversations with. This is really important. Forgive me if I'm being a little blunt, but it's really important that you understand this. So this faculty member, this male faculty member, was posing as a girl, as a high school age girl, and was sending pictures back and forth to students. In other words, this guy was sending pictures to his students. Obviously, and what struck me was the way he was caught was that a student went and told his parents. Now, my first reaction, you could imagine, was revulsion and everything else. But then I said, imagine how outstanding his parents were in terms of developing that relationship. Because the child felt comfortable having this conversation with his parents. Imagine what it's like for a 15-year-old kid to sit down with his parents and say, Mom, Dad, I was exchanging pictures with this, I thought it was a girl, it turned out to be this person, So it's a horribly uncomfortable conversation. The exposure comes, we're able to protect them when we can speak to our children openly. And one of the things that I always talk about is the importance of having that relationship with your children, where your children can tell you anything. I'm going to post here on this social media and on Instagram, and I'll send it around. I did an entire talk over the, not this summer, but the previous summer, when there was COVID and everybody was when it was really locked down. So I thought to myself, I have the same group of parents. Usually I go lecture over a weekend, or I do a one-off with schools or communities of parents. So I said, I have all these families that are basically like I am, just at home. Wouldn't it be a great idea if we utilize the opportunity to have extensive, detailed parenting classes? So I did a series of 7 classes, and if you have pre-adolescents or adolescents at home, I really, really encourage you to watch them. They're free, they're on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube page, it's Yaakov Horowitz. It's called Mentor or Supervisor. Mentor or Supervisor. And the big idea of that series was to encourage parents to, rather than only supervising your younger children, try to do the things that will allow you to mentor them, where they seek your advice, where they're comfortable discussing things with you. So that was a 7-part series. There was a lot of Q&A. It's posted up on my YouTube page. I will post links on all my social media platforms to those 7 classes. One of them specifically was about, again, the series is called Mentor or Supervisor. You can look it up. Again, it's at Yaakov Horowitz, Mentor or Supervisor. There are 7 parts to it. But one of the classes specifically was about, it was titled, Would Your Kids Tell You? That was the title of the talk. Would your kids tell you? Meaning, if your child had a secret, if your child was doing something wrong, it doesn't have to be child abuse. It could be anything. They could have a drinking problem. They could, anything. Would your children tell you? And I am a very practical person, we actually very practically went through with the parents. I went through the barriers. What are the barriers? Why would a child not tell their parents? Why would a child be intimidated or frightened to tell their parents? And it's actually pretty logical, right? You say, well, they're embarrassed, they don't want to get punished, they don't want to disappoint us, we're not going to keep that confidentiality. We went through about 7 attributes, 7 reasons why kids would not want to confide in their parents. And as a result of that, because they won't want to confide in their parents and because the information flow doesn't go. So how can you mentor someone if they can't talk to you? parenthetically, you can head over if you'd like to. There's a Bright Beginnings page. It's called Bright Beginnings Forum. It's on Instagram. I do all the other things here, but there we've been publishing since June. We've been publishing one 59-second parenting clip every day. We've been doing, again, one clip every day. We have a different topic every week, and we have about 160 or so clips already. It so happens that these 2 weeks, last week and this week, I did a double week on mentoring. The topic is just what I'm talking about now. Can you mentor your child? Mentoring your own child. And I talk very candidly about great mentors that I had in my life, how powerful they impacted me, and what attributes did they have? What attributes did they have that you can replicate? It was a very, honest discussion about it. And I encourage you to go have a look. It's Bright Beginnings Forum. We're going to go through those topics. In fact, I'll tell you what. How's this? I will do a talk tonight I'm going to do a live at 9 o'clock tonight, at 9 p.m. tonight, titled, Would Your Kids Tell You? How's that? Okay, so I just decided to do this now. Okay, so 9 o'clock tonight, we'll reconvene, and the title of the talk is going to be, Would Your Kids Tell You? And I'm going to try to get you to a yes. I'm going to try to get you to a yes where your children would be able to tell you. So come, join us, and we'll do it interactively. It so happens that when I did that talk, one of those 7 in the series of Mentor or Supervisor, I actually brought on our youngest daughter, Sarah, who's now 25 years old. I brought her on, so the parents that we had about 200 parents, 250 on every night for the series, so they could ask her questions. What was it like to be able to speak to your parents openly about anything? And she was really great. The parents challenge her, challenge me. It was actually very interesting. It was a very interesting discussion that we had. So by all means, tune in 9 o'clock tonight, 9 p.m. I'll record it and I'll post it afterwards for those in Israel. I don't want you to have to get up at 4 in the morning. But if you can get yourself to a place in your relationship where your children can trust you and talk to you about anything, then you're really mentoring them. And one of the beautiful things about mentoring is that supervising has a shelf life. Supervising, it only lasts a certain amount of time. Supervising means, it's classical parenting. But if you want to mentor your child, after a while, you can't make rules for them anymore when they're too old. But mentoring could be for life. That's really what it's about. And I'm actually starting, in the parenting clips on Bright Beginnings Forum, I'm starting a new topic called adolescence. We're going to be doing it for about 4 to 6 months, starting Sunday. So I really encourage you, if you'd like to, all of this is free. So tune in and learn, study parenting. The more you study, the more empowered you'll be. The more empowered you are, the better, the easier it will be to really raise your children through these very, very confusing and challenging times. So, parenting is the key, and feeling empowered is the key. One final thing before we go. Our child safety book, it's called Let's Stay Safe. We have in English. It's available on Amazon. You can do a Google search for Let's Stay Safe. We co-published it together with ArtScroll. You can get it on ArtScroll's website or anywhere in the world that ArtScroll Judaica books are sold. We also translated it into Yiddish. It's called Sei Gesund. And we made 2 Hebrew versions for the Haredi community called Levetach. Masha Batuach Batuach. And for the Dati Lomi community, for the Modern Orthodox community, called Levetach. Those books are available in Israel at all Yefei Nof stores. Our books are in over 120,000 homes, Baruch Hashem, in 3 languages, in Yiddish, 2 Hebrew versions, and in English. I've been dreaming for a long time of making a push to get a book in every home. It's eminently doable. And I'm trying to get people, to parents like yourselves, to get books yourselves. We sell them just about at cost, and we're actually lowering the price now. We're making them available in America for those who want to get for their entire communities for $5 a book with free shipping. So if you have 100 families in your school, or your community, or your shul, or your block, it's $500. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money, but we really would love to get a book in every home. And this whole business just encouraged me to really, push this forward. And we're going to be announcing some parts of it, and you can all be really part of it. You're making an upsharing, you're giving a kid a haircut at 3 years old, get some books and hand out to your friends. Get them in every preschool class. This stuff really, really works. So take advantage of the free resources that are out there, and I'll be sending out information more about getting getting our child safety book in every home. So that's it for now. Be empowered, feel empowered. Learn about child safety education. The more you learn, the more you'll be able to help your kids, the more self-confident you'll feel in your ability to do this. So 9 o'clock tonight, we're going to be back here at Yaakov Horowitz, and the topic is going to be Would Your Kids Tell You?, which is an integral part of child abuse prevention. But in the meantime, feel empowered. Spread the message. Be an ambassador for child safety, because honestly, in your own neighborhoods, the more families know about it, the more people are educated, the safer we're all going to be. So feel empowered. This is very frightening. This whole business with Walder is extremely rattling. It's intimidating, and it's all of that. But as far as we're concerned, as parents, it's a tremendous opportunity to get the messaging to our children that we might not have done during regular times, quote unquote. And I encourage every educator and every community leader to speak about it from the pulpit, speak about child safety. There's nothing in, again, the book was approved by ArtScroll and Agud in Tarmasura. It's people say, well, should I take it? I say, it's the ultimate tzniut. It's the ultimate tznius. There's nothing more tznius than saying protect your own space. So, it is the ultimate in tznius. So let's get on board and let's help keep our kids safe. Thank you very much for listening.